The 2018 season started out pretty normal, setting trail cams up out in the summer, but man, there's no better feeling than pulling cards and having big velvet bucks in early summer. Once I seen that buck on camera, I knew I was going to put all my time into hunting that deer. So on opening day of bow season, I sat in the corner of a hayfield where I got the last picture of that split G2 buck. That morning, I seen some smaller bucks come in through the field, but no big buck. All that early bow season, I bounced around trying to find him. I sat by the beans one weekend, hoping to catch him coming out before dark, even just to lay eyes on him. I still wasn't having any luck finding that deer, so I decided to jump into the timber. I seen some smaller bucks, I seen some doe. There was a lot of movement just before dark, but still no G2 buck. The whole first part of bow season, I went without seeing that buck on hoof. So I decided to set a couple more trail cameras and try and pinpoint where this buck was living. During mid to late October, I was bouncing from side to side of property from the east side to the west side, trying to spot this buck. I was pulling cards on my way in and hunting, checking cameras, still no G2 buck. But things really changed when we got into November. Bucks were just starting to cruise, and I knew I needed to be where the majority of the doe were, and that was on the east side of the property, up tucked closer to the bedding. That's when I had one eventful day in the stand. I spotted this buck stand right up out of his bed. I'm all about cool, unique bucks just like this one. Very unique in its own way. The more I watched this buck stand there looking around, the more I convinced myself that that's a buck that I would potentially want to shoot and would potentially pull the trigger on. And again, at that point, I haven't seen the G2 buck on hoof in person yet. Once I finally made that decision that that's a buck that I would pull the trigger on, I got aggressive. I picked up the rattling horns and I lightly rattled at him. As he started heading my way, another smaller buck had come into the rattling sequence. Once that buck could see the edge of the field, he knew something was up. He knew that sound had come from the edge of that field right before the timber, and he couldn't see any deer out there, so he knew something was up. I waited about an hour after those bucks ran off, and I picked up the horns again and started rattling. I was really trying to rattle that buck back out to try and get him to think that there was still some bucks down here and maybe a hot doe, and try and get him to come into bow range. It wasn't 2 minutes after I rattled that I heard a deer running in the woods to my left. I looked over, and for the first time ever, I got to lay eyes on the split G2 buck. It's just a beautiful deer. Big body buck, big swollen neck, tall rack, just a beautiful deer. Right into me. I thought he was going to come right through that tall grass out of the woods and come straight to the base of my tree line. But he jumped up a couple doe on his way to me. just like that, the encounter was over. And about 10 minutes later, that same buck came out of that same spot and crossed the field about 100 yards in front of me, heading up to the bedding, never coming within bow range. I hunted that spot pretty hard the next couple of days, never seeing that buck again until rifle season. It was a really cold day, really cold morning. There was some leftover snow on the ground from the snowstorm a week before. It was just one of those really cold, icy mornings. I decided to sit in the same stand I had previously seen that buck in a couple weeks before. Well, sure enough, I didn't see that buck sitting in that stand, but it just so happens, so on my way out, I'm walking on the edge of the field and I look up on the edge of the timberline and I see that buck walking parallel with me. Luckily, I seen the buck before he seen me. It was so random and it happened so fast. I just remember kneeling down on one knee, getting a good rest, getting the deer in my sights, taking a deep breath, and squeezing the trigger. I made a perfect shot and the deer didn't run no more than 30 yards. Unfortunately, it all happened so fast, I didn't get the kill on film. I was walking out and it all happened so quick, I couldn't take a chance of not killing this buck. And a lot of photos and recovery photos of this deer was lost with an old camera and an old laptop. But the memory of this buck and this hunt and the whole year of hunting this buck will last me a lifetime.